Hello, and welcome to Enlightened Empaths with Samantha and Denise. We're so happy to have you join us once again this week. This episode is part of our monthly Enlightened Entrepreneur Show, so we have a very exciting guest to introduce to you. Our guest today is Bryn Blankinship. She is a certified master hypnotherapist, international instructor, author, specializing in the field of past life regression, life between lives spiritual regression, and soul expression spiritual regression. She is the executive director for the Bryn Center, a spiritual farm surrounded by wetlands and wildlife, a place for breathing new life into souls. It's just beautiful. You guys, when you have a chance, go to brynblankinship.com and check out all the photos. We'll post links on our Facebook page. Bryn is also the executive director, and has also worked with the Michael Newton Institute, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Her book, Hindsight is Foresight, Finding and Following Your Soul's Guidance, is due to be released in 2019. In addition, she's a contributing author to Michael Newton's Memories of the Afterlife and Brian Weiss's Miracles Happen. She is featured in several other books and documentaries on the subject of past life regression and life between lives spiritual regression. Bryn is a certified instructor with the International Association of Counselors and Therapists and an alliance trainer for the Michael Newton Institute for Life Between Lives Hypnotherapy. Bryn also served for 7 years as a vice president and board member with the Newton Institute, an international organization of Life Between Lives spiritual regressionists. She keeps a busy practice in Wilmington, North Carolina, seeing clients and teaching hypno skill sets and hypno-regression certification courses to an international student base. Wow, that is an impressive resume and bio, Bryn. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on.
We are very excited to talk to you about your spiritual journey and your path into doing this work. And so I would just love for you to start by telling our listeners a little bit about how you came to this path of being a hypnotherapist. I know you started out in the acting world, correct?
Yes. Well, even before that, I started out as a legal assistant, but I always wanted to be an actress. And I was taking acting courses on the side, working with a coach out of LA. And, and I live on the East Coast. And I had stage fright. So that's not a good thing to have when you're an actress. And,
Right.
But it's more common than you would think. And someone said, hey, why don't you go see a hypnotherapist and see if you can get past that. In fact, it could be caused from a past life. And so I had always had an interest in past lives, even when I was young, but I didn't know that that was something I could go and explore with a hypnotherapist. So I found a past life regressionist, and we explored and cleared blocks that I had from past lives when I was basically singing for my supper in Europe and over in England. And I've had a couple of those past lives. And what's interesting is I don't sing a bit in my current life, not at all.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, but I was very successful in some of those lifetimes, and it just helped me clear the pieces of that were holding me back and help me move more fully into the character. So that happened. And then in my acting class, I didn't know this until I got into the field of hypnotherapy. We were doing hypnosis. We were doing progressive relaxation, going in, imagining, seeing, getting the part, seeing yourself on the set, all those kinds of things in acting class. And that's what we're doing in hypnosis, is to help see yourself improving, moving into the changes that you're wanting to create. So it was exciting.
Wow.
That's very
incredible. I have a quick question before we continue on your journey to what you do now. If in a past life you were a singer and made your living that way, and you don't have that talent in this life, do you find through your work that sometimes people will subconsciously suppress a talent they had in a past life because it's just not a part of their journey in this life?
Well, they can do that, and that is possible. And also, you may not need that talent in your current life because it was suited to the past life. So there were parts that I was repressing because it became work in the past life to have to sing for your supper, and there were some very unpleasant experiences too. That doesn't mean in this life that moving into that field was going to be unpleasant. I just had to get back past the fear of the possibility that it could be. And it was also in that life, there were several lifetimes. I shouldn't say just that life, but there were a couple of lifetimes where, I'd been killed for standing out. So it might make you hold back a little bit when you know that you could die from it.
Sure.
So that was a little bit of the holding back as far as speaking out and speaking your truth. And so then from there, so I had a past life regression that took me into a future progression. And so a future progression is where you start seeing something that's going to happen in the future, or I should say a possible future potential. So I saw this very vividly. I was there. There was prairie grass under my feet. I was seeing these certain types of trees. They were like apple trees. And I was just walking through this orchard, picking these apples off of the trees. And I knew that they symbolized acting jobs. So I was just walking through having my pick. So on the East Coast, I was working, but I wasn't working to where I could give up my day job. And by this time I had moved out of the legal field, and I knew that other actors were able to support themselves, and I wanted to be a working actor and support myself with my acting. It wasn't about being famous, it was about doing what you enjoy doing. So that session started this transformation. And a friend of mine from LA called and she said, "Bryn, you've got to come out here. There's an opportunity for you to come out. And so you can stay with me on my couch for a couple of weeks, but I have a roommate, so you can't stay too long." So I talked it over with my husband. We worked it out. He was a practicing massage therapist, just starting his practice. And he said, "Look, I don't want to start over, but you go ahead and go. And if something happens that we need to, then I'll sell the house and come on out and we'll take it from there." So terror set in because I was getting what I wanted, and it was fearful, that I could have everything I had been saying that I wanted. So I got in my car and I drove out to LA all by myself with my little cell phone and my suitcase and my headshot. Started work, I stayed out there for a bit and then started working. In fact, I had an opportunity to move into the apartment, and the roommate took a job somewhere else. And then I just started auditioning. I got an agent right away, and it was my job to audition. And so one day I was standing in front of Billy Crystal, the comedian. I wasn't expecting Billy Crystal. I know sometimes you didn't know who the director was going to be until you walked into the room. And just the fact that you were a director was enough to terrify me. But that day I walked in and there was Billy Crystal with these little khaki shorts, and he's a little guy, and he was sitting at this table with we call them the suits, with a suit on each side of him. And he said, "Okay, Bryn, go ahead and go." So I did my thing. And then we played. He threw some scenarios at me. And, normally you would be out of the room in maybe 5 minutes, if you're lucky, 8 minutes. Well, I was in there about 30 minutes. And he'd say, "Well, try this, Bryn. Well, how about that?" And so he threw these different scenarios, and I caught the ball and threw it back. And it was great. It was so much fun. It wasn't until after I left that it hit me. Oh my gosh, that was Billy Crystal, But that's when everything that I'd been working on came full circle. And, I didn't have any of those blocks that would have had me hold back, because you start to overthink your character. You start thinking too much and you're not being the character. And oh, by the way, all of my characters, when I created their background stories, they had a little bit of astrology and a little bit of, I gave them different astrology signs and different characteristics based on their sign. That was like my little secret that helped me with each character.
That's a great tip. That's a good tip for writers too.
Yeah. And so about a year went by, And I was on the set. I was booking commercials, some film. I got the part with Billy Crystal, and it's a
Wow.
small part as a reporter, but it meant a lot to me that I got that one. And I was on the set and one location actually in the Grapevine. It's this area north of LA. I had my Birkenstocks on, and I was waiting and for my turn, and I had a trailer. There's a trailer with my name on the door with a star, and somebody said, "Hey," I was standing there looking out over the field, over a cliff actually, and they said, "Hey, Bryn, watch out. There might be snakes hiding in that grass. You should have some boots on." And I looked down and saw the prairie grass. At the same moment, I had like a deja vu moment back to the past life session. And I looked
Wow.
up, and where we were going to be filming, where I was going to be sitting under the tree as an aunt in a Chevy OnStar commercial, was that apple tree. Except it didn't have apples, it didn't have fruit that I was aware of, but it looked just like the scene. And it was such an incredible moment. I knew exactly what everything meant. And, I had pushed through that fear to go out there and pursue it. And here I was doing it. So that's how powerful the regression was that I had. Well, I had a couple of different ones, but that particular one. And so,
Wow, that's such
um,
an empowering experience to see it, create it, and then be in that moment.
yes, yes.
Wow. Okay, sorry, continue.
No, no, I'm sorry. I'm so long-winded sometimes. Um, so
No, it's a great story.
So that happened, and then I did some more work, and there was a writer strike, there was an actor strike, and I was out there for a couple of years. My husband would come out, or I'd fly home, and I met some really great people. I had a really good time, but I really enjoyed all the work behind the scenes. And so that's when I made the decision that I was going to study past life regression, hypnosis, and then past life regression specialty, and come back to Wilmington and start my practice. And so I started, I took some courses, and in between, on days when I didn't have when I wasn't working in the film industry, I had some time off, and I took some courses just to get my basis. And then I came back to Wilmington. That's when I looked up Brian Weiss, Roger Wolger. I didn't know who Michael Newton was yet, but I learned who these people were through the hypnosis courses. They were the ones, like they were the leaders in the field, and that's who I wanted to go study with. I wanted to find out how they did what they did. And then along the way, that's when I met Michael Newton. I read about Michael Newton's work, and then I went and had a chance to study with him.
Wow. And so you came full circle. It's almost like you healed or checked off some karma from the singing past lives with your acting work, and you knew that was done, and now you were going to help people in a totally different way. That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yes, and it was a lot of fun to do the acting, and there's still the film studio here in Wilmington, and I could have continued up and down the East Coast. However, when I didn't feel it was fair to schedule clients the way the film industry can go. Sometimes you're set up for Tuesday, and then they bump everything to Wednesday, and
Mm.
I just didn't want the chaos of moving everyone around, because that's not fair to the client. And this is
Mm.
client-centered work. If you set a session with me, I want to keep that date unless it's unavoidable. And I didn't want to have two, I guess what I'm saying is I didn't want to have two masters. So I really had to wrestle with it, but it became clear that I really needed to make a choice, but there was no choice at that point because I knew what I wanted to do.
When people are hypnotized, I'm not asking you to explain hypnosis and go down that rabbit hole, but I guess what I'm asking is just a general idea. When people are hypnotized, what is happening to their conscious? Like, are they putting their consciousness aside? Are they diving into the subconscious or the superconscious? Like, how do you explain to your students what happens when you're actually hypnotizing someone?
So I describe it as a state that we go into all the time throughout the day. When you're daydreaming, when you're driving and you know how to get from work to home or point A to point B because you've driven it 100 times
Mm-hmm.
and the car could practically drive itself. Or if you're reading a book or watching a movie and you're so into it that you don't see someone coming in the room, or if you're daydreaming and you're just lost in thought, it's like that. However, and you pass through it actually when you're waking up in the morning or when you're going to sleep at night. So it's like that. But in this case, we're dipping down into the subconscious to bring this information up to a conscious level so that we can understand it better. And so the client is not unconscious. They are aware of what's happening because during the session, they're talking to me at the same time. I mean, I'm basically creating a safe space for them to explore this, to trust themselves and me, to let go, to go into that deeper space, and then giving them space and permission to explore whatever's coming up. But then they're talking to me about it at the same time. So it's basically like I'm interviewing them while they're in that deeper state because I'm asking a lot of questions and I'm asking them what's happening. And then they're getting so much information that they're sharing it with me. And this might be a good point for me to bring up. Some people are very visual and others are not. Some are kinesthetic and some are audio.
Mm-hmm.
So a visual person may see it playing out before them. A kinesthetic person would feel it more. They would feel the information from the scene and understand what it is, but they're not necessarily seeing it. And then an audio person, it may be that someone is whispering, like a guide is whispering to them, telling them the information about what's happening in the past life.
That's fascinating. So it's based on your learning style almost, how the regression plays out for you. That's really neat. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Did you, Denise? I thought it was all visual.
Well, even my stories in the books read as if the client was visualizing or seeing what was happening. It's just sometimes they're noticing, but they're not seeing. Because you can notice something without it being a visual noticing. You can notice without it being visual.
Yes.
But you can also notice and it be visual.
So it would be very similar to some mediums and psychics are clairsentient, and some are clairvoyant, and some are clairaudient. So it's that similarity. What I absolutely love about what you said, Bryn, is when you saw the apple tree, what popped into my head immediately was what a beautiful validation. Because I think a lot of this work is, even though the three of us, we believe it, we feel it, we trust it, it's a very... You have to have that leap of faith to be able to actually do this type of work and allow it to help you shape the next stage of your life.
Yes.
And I absolutely loved when you said that, and I got chills as far as seeing that tree and seeing the grass, and I could almost feel it like a vivid dream when we have a premonition or a dream about something. The other thing, the way you described the hypnosis was perfect, because I've done regressions, but I've also been hypnotized for the same thing as far as fear of speaking in front of people and for smoking cessation. And it is, you're aware, you're cognizant, you're in the room. It's not woo-woo scary. It's very relaxing.
Yes. And so in pre-talk, I explained to the client what to expect, because there are a lot of things that you may have seen on TV, and, TV is drama, so they have to dramatize it, but a session is not usually the way it's depicted on TV shows or stage hypnosis.
When you talk about future progression, what is your idea of that? Because you said possible future. So has your work shown you that the future is destined, or that there's just possible outcomes? What have you learned from doing future regressions with your clients about the future and how it lays out for us?
Well, that's a really great question, because what I've noticed, what I know from that story about the apple tree, is that I had a choice. I had the choice of going or not going. But I knew that fear set in big time, because this was I had a lot on the line here, and I had considered going up to New York, but I felt more drawn to going to LA and here it was happening. But that doesn't mean that you don't have a lot of fear about what you're going to do once you get there. And so
Right.
I could have used free will and not taken that journey. I could have said, no, I'm not going to do that. Even though I've got it laid out, even though I have this opportunity. And it was I hadn't talked to my friend in 5 years. She just called me up out of the blue and said, hey, Bryn, you need to come out here. And by the way, you could stay with me. So that was synchronicity right there after I'd had this session showing me, all of these great things that could happen if I would just go. So I could have blocked it. I could have just said, no, I'm not going to do that. But thankfully I did find the strength to go and then do what I had to while I was there. And so with clients, what I've noticed, and I've included some of this in my book. I have a book coming out that's Hindsight is Foresight is the title of it. It's about finding and following your soul's guidance. Because what I've noticed with clients is they come in to get information about something, and their guides or even their soul will give them information and validation and options for the future. And many will take that path and follow through with what they're being told, whether it's to take a class or, to make a move or something, and others will not. And so when they don't, that shifts all the people that lined up to support that path. Let's use my friend, let's use my husband, let's use my mom. These are my emotional supporters when I was going out there. My dad, he was interested, but my mom was the one that really stepped up and said, I'll help you if I can. My husband and my friend, right? Well, these are all the players. If I didn't take that path and I didn't go out there, then I wouldn't have met that agent who was going to step up. I wouldn't have met some of my friends in the acting class, some of my friends who have gone on to be very well known, a couple of them that were already well known back then. I wouldn't have met any of that group of people had I not followed through. And if I had backed out, then it would have shifted something, and I don't know what, but it would have shifted something in their lives by me not being there, and then someone else who would have come in another way, if that makes sense.
Wow. It does. It's just fascinating to think about how our free will affects the free will of other people and their path as well.
Yes. Our soul groups and all these groups that come together of like-minded soul groups who are all working on the same thing or the same theme. So, and also in my regression, I was told you'll go out there for one thing, but you'll come back with another. Now, I didn't know what that meant, and the guides will do that. They will give you clues, but they don't spell it out for you because you're meant to figure it out on your own. But once I figured it out, then I understood, I went out for acting, but I came back with past life regression. My husband, and I'm still with him, by the way, he's a great guy. As he flew out as we were driving back cross country, as we're driving through the desert, probably in Arizona, he's driving and he looks at me in the passenger seat and he says, so, honey, what do you think you're going to do when we get back home? Do you think you're going to get an office job and go back to that legal field? And I said, oh, no, I'm going to be a past life regressionist. I'm going to study hypnosis and past life regression. I'm going to study more of that, and I'm going to open up a practice. And he looked at me and he almost drove off the road because he just caught himself, and then he took a deep breath, straightened out the car, and then he said, okay, if that's what you need to do, then we'll do it. He goes, but who in the world is going to come to you for that? He goes, I know you found someone to do a past life regression with, but who is going to come to you for that? And so years later, and not that many years later, just a couple, Michael Newton was standing in my living room speaking to my husband, and I brought up that incident and reminded him, and my husband laughed, and he said, look, I didn't want you to have to go through this long, involved thing to get your practice going. He said, being a male in the field of massage in North Carolina, that was a lot. That was a big deal. And he said, and what you picked was even harder. And so, we all laughed. And then Michael Newton used to always ask me, he would say, Bryn, how in the world can you do what you do in the South, in the Bible Belt? And I said, because Michael, these are like my cousins. These are like friends. And, if we can move beyond the religious piece and connect, then that's what we're trying to do, and if we can remove some of those barriers, then they won't be so fearful. Because I have people from all backgrounds that come in, for sessions, spiritually minded people and religious minded people as well. And I've worked with priests and rabbis and ministers, not from my town, they come from other places. People have an interest in the afterlife. They want to know more. And so if you can find a way to connect in a way that's not scary so that they understand it, then you're opening up doors to information that might be helpful to them, that maybe they didn't have another way to talk about it. And just speaking on that, as in religion, sometimes they're referred to as angels, where in a past life session, the beings that come through are referred to as a guide. So when they can make the connection and they can see that some of this was actually in the Bible years back, it helps make it more understandable, more relatable. And I've even had past life sessions with a couple of clients that I've taken back to the times where it was taken out of the Bible. They were responsible, or they were part of a group that they were aware of a group that was rewriting the Bible for political reasons. One especially is during the time of St. James, when it got written and then rewritten a couple of different ways. So.
Wow. What did they say? What specifically they took out? Was it just references to guides?
What they took out were the references to regression, the fact that we've had past lives. There were passages that were taken out where people would have understood their own power, because it was really, they wanted it. It was really set up so that the priest would be the one that would be the go-between. And there were some really, I've regressed clients to these times as well when they were priests, and there were some really spiritual, enlightened priests, as well as some of the bad ones, that we might have known about. But there were some priests that were really in touch with their higher self. They would work directly with some of the ascended masters. They had that connection in the monastery. And I have a story about that in my book, one related to the priest, past life and life between lives.
Wow. So, wait, I'm just confused. So you regressed a priest and have a story about that, or you regressed someone who was a priest during that time?
So I've regressed priests just to one of their past lives. And I have regressed people that are in their current incarnation that are not a priest, that have gone back to a lifetime where they were. Now, that
is fascinating.
That
a priest would come to you.
He works with energy work and is learning more in that field, but he did that kind of a work back then when he was the priest.
Yes, it does.
Forward his skills as an energy worker, as well as connecting to higher self. And in that case, he was working with one of the ascended masters.
Wow. Denise, I'll let you jump in. I have so many questions going through my head.
Well, there are, it's very, very fascinating, Bryn, and incredible that you're able to meet such a wide range of people and bring them back to help them find clarity. Because isn't that a huge part of this type of work, is to find the clarity that you need to progress in this lifetime as well? Often there's a link.
Yes. And so some people, a small percentage of my clients, are feeling like they're being held back by the past life and they're kind of stuck in the past life. Many of my clients want to explore a past life to help them just clear a block that's holding them back in their current life. And so that's why the book is called Hindsight is Foresight, because we're going into the hindsight to bring it forward so that you can move forward in your life. You know, the way I work, it's not about exploring a past life and staying stuck in the past life and all of that. It's about resolving it, understanding it, so that you can move forward as a more full expression of who you are now. I mean, you've already lived that life, right?
Right.
So you want to be the best one that you can be now.
I like on your website where you say you can't change the past, but you can change the way you feel about the past.
Yes.
And I think that's huge.
That is something I repeat that over and over in class to my students, because once you change how you feel about it, it's not going to hold you back in the same way.
It's where the power is.
Putting you back into now, and, you know, and not being so caught up into what's coming next. And, you know, as an actor, this taught me so much, because you're always looking for the next acting job. And when you're in that role and you've just gotten the part, you know, it's hard to enjoy the moment, because you're thinking, well, I've got 2 more days here, and then where am I going to be after this? So, but you have to stay in the moment to be the character, to be the best that you can be, or else they're not going to call you back for another job, you know? So it's really about being in the moment and then connecting all of those present moments, you know, because when your future gets here, it's still the present moment. So you're always evolving through the present.
Do you find that just helping people remember a painful or powerful or instructive moment from a past life is enough to release the block, or do they have to do more than that?
Most times that's enough, unless it's something traumatic, like a painful childbirth where they lost the child, or maybe they even died in the past life. And maybe they've had a series of those types of past lives that involved the loss of a child or dying during childbirth. And I have a story that I just worked on for a book with the Newton Institute called Wisdom of Souls that's coming out. And it was a series of past lives that this woman was experiencing this issue. And so, and by the way, the guides have humor. So that's how they communicate with us. And so they had her laughing, like she is reliving this painful death where she died in the 1800s along, well, she one of her lifetimes she died along with the child. The other one, she had such a painful childbirth that she couldn't have any more children. And they told her to lighten up because medical care has come a long way since the 1800s. And and that it's going to be okay. So, you know, they like to get in there and use humor, because once you can lighten up and kind of laugh about it, you can see it's okay, or you can see it in another way. You can see it from another perspective. There are lots of things that they will throw that humor in there just to get your attention.
How many past lives will a client remember in one session, or do you prefer to take them to one past life?
They generally go to the primary past life that's holding them back. Occasionally, they'll go through a couple of lifetimes, and then 1 or 2 clients will go through a whole series of lifetimes. Also, if you're doing the past life session, you're doing a past life or 2, maybe a couple of them come up, and then that's preparation for the Life Between Lives session. And if you're doing the Life Between Lives session, then you may explore another past life, as well as the guides may talk to you, to the client in the spirit world, and explore more. I've developed through my work a technique that I call soul expression spiritual regression. And the acronym for that is SESR, SESR. It's like assessor session, like an assessment. And so that will bypass the past life. You have the past life session first in preparation, but then usually during the day of the SESR session, you go right into the spirit world. And from there, the guides will lead you to the information that you need. They may explore a past life, but you don't go through the past life the way that you would during a Life Between Lives session to get you into the spirit world. So let me just back up for a second. With the Life Between Lives, on the day of the LBL, That's short for our Life Between Lives, LBL. On the day of that session, the way you get into the Life Between Lives space is to go through a past life, through the death scene, to the end of it, to the crossover into the spirit world. And that, so you're exploring a second past life to do that. And then in soul expression, spiritual regression, we bypass that piece and go directly from current life into the spirit world. If there's something that a guide wants someone to know from the past life, the guide will bring that information out or reveal it to them or show it to them, but it's coming from the space in between in the spirit world.
Now, as a client coming to you, I would love to go to you and say, okay, when I do my LBL, I want to know why I chose my parents. Like, can you set up questions you want to ask your guides, or do you just kind of let the guides guide the session?
Well, so what I do is I have my clients write down the reasons that they're coming to me for the session. And I give them an overview of a soul expression, spiritual regression, and what that is. And then I explain to them that as we're doing this session, you need to be prepared that the guides have a plan of their own. So we can plan this out, but they may have another journey for you or another route that they want to take you on. What I do once they're there, I do my best to go back to their list and try to incorporate their sessions, their questions into the session as best as I can. But often the guides are leading them to things that are going to explain things that are already on their list. Because the guides are the ones often that are prompting them to come in for the session to begin with. Can we talk a little bit about the soul? Am I adding?
Yes, please.
Okay. So on top of the client being in the spirit world and exploring their past lives and soul groups and areas, soul reflection and soul awareness and other areas there in the spirit world, there's also the opportunity for me I always get their soul name. We always ask their soul name and find out about that. But I can bring the soul through the body and have that body speak. Let the soul use that body to speak. And they will start speaking with me, having a conversation about the client who's laying in the chair, speaking about the client in the third person as if the client wasn't there.
Wow.
So, they
okay, wait, I have to jump in real quick.
Okay.
I love the idea of a soul name. I'm expecting that a soul name isn't like Jennifer. Like, are they really unique names that they come up with, or?
Yes, sometimes they're beautiful, flowing, long names. Sometimes the name they get is short, because when they try to explain it to me, it's like the client will say, there's no earthly name. I can't put my name into words. Sometimes it's a melody or something. So they'll give me a piece of it. Like they might say, my name is Shar, but that's not my whole name, but just call me Shar for now. And so then we'll find out about the characteristics of that soul, what that soul brings forward into this life that's unique to the soul. Because each lifetime you're going to have a different body, a different personality, a different mind, that the soul is continuous in the qualities that it brings. And you may choose a body that's in opposition to your soul, or you may choose a body that's congruent to your soul. So I'll do that, but then I'll be interviewing the soul as if, we're going to find out some more information about the client that's in the chair. It's just, when the client comes out of the session, they're blown away by it because they read it in some books. They might have read a story about it, but they don't know it's going to be like this until they experience it. And it's like they're there hearing themselves speak about themselves in the third person to me, telling them things like what she doesn't understand is, or what she needs to realize is, she needs to go and do this.
It almost, when I've read all of Michael Newton's work several times, it fascinates me. And every time I do, it almost sounds like a form of positive possession. Do you know what I mean? And I always wonder, like, okay, does the creator create these bodies, and then does the creator create these souls. It's almost like they're two distinct things. Am I interpreting that incorrectly?
I see why you call it that. The thing about a possession is that the conscious mind of the client is not there. They're overcome. Mm-hmm. They're not aware. In this situation, they're aware, and it's like the client is sharing space, sharing the microphone with the soul to talk to me. And these bodies host the soul. The soul resides in the body, but we're not always aligned with their highest self when we're speaking. We get this earthly energy that kind of weighs us down. And so we're not always in alignment. A more spiritually minded person is trying to align themselves and live more congruently, in alignment with their soul and their highest good.
So would somebody pick a personality that is not congruent with their soul for a specific reason, or is it kind of like a competition over there and you just got to take what you can get?
No. No. Well, there are souls waiting in line for these bodies, right? So when you get a body, it's important to really take good care of it as best as you can, because it's an opportunity to come to Earth, and Earth is an emotional planet. We come here to experience the emotions, right? And then we get here and then we say, oh gosh, it's so emotional, I don't like it. Well, that's why you came. And it's an intense place to be. So with the bodies, there's actually a story that's being included in my book that talks about how we bring with us certain attributes for what we're going to live that lifetime. And you might choose a soul that's a body that's in opposition to your soul to experience the other side, to experience something different. Maybe you've had over the years a few clients that are impatient. They want to dream it, be it, and it happen right away. They don't want to have to wait. They think that if they can dream it, it should happen right now. But it's a process and it takes time, and that's one step of it. But you have to see it, feel it, be it, and align with it. And so as they're doing that, they're stepping into the space. So they get impatient with themselves, they get impatient with their guides, and that puts everything out of sync because they're not in the moment. They're trying to get ahead of where they're at in the moment that they're in. But still imagine it, still visualize it, but you have to still be present in the space that you're in. And so they may go into the session and find out that they're actually a pretty calm and laid back soul living a life as an impatient person. Or they may be one of those souls that has to get a lot done, even in the spirit world, because we have jobs over there as well, and activities and things that we do there, roles that we play, and specialties that we fulfill. And so maybe they have a lot of work to do there. And so they'll come into a lifetime where it's more laid back, and it might feel like they're not getting a whole lot done. But I have a couple of clients that actually incarnate to take a break from the work that they do on the other side, because they do like a rehabilitation with souls that have such traumatic lives on earth that when they return, their soul needs that restoration process. And so these overseeing souls go back and kind of work in that rehab. We call it spiritual rehab, and kind of work with them to get them to a place that they can integrate again.
Denise, that's what happened. I picked a body that doesn't like exercise. So
and maybe you don't need it when you're in the spirit world. Your body doesn't.
That's right. Denise, you were going to ask Bryn a really cool question about patterns. Can you ask her that?
Trying to figure out if you see patterns or things that repeat, or, well, that's what a pattern is, obviously, in the work that you do. Like if you regress people back to a certain time period, or are there certain demographics that you work with that seem to need the same lessons in this lifetime, or you go back to the lifetime and see those same lessons?
What I notice with patterns would be, because I do, when I'm in the session, it's like my awareness is opened up and expanded, and I'm able to see things. I'm able to understand patterns, whether I see it or just am being guided to ask questions of my client about their patterns. I tend to notice the client, the way they're speaking when they come in, and the things that are bothering them, and the questions on their list, that once we go into the past life, I can see the same pattern building again in a past life, where maybe it's a past life of betrayal, or a past life of feeling unempowered, or feeling like they couldn't speak up or stand up for themselves. And I can see those kind of patterns that have carried over from the past life to the current life. So sometimes there's a feeling that they have, that they've added to their list of questions when they come in, that is actually a pattern that's been created through a series of lifetimes.
So similar in a sense to, be careful, you'll have to come back and do this again. If you're seeing a repetition of patterns or a similar, and again, it seems to seamlessly go with when you said this is an emotional planet, we come here to experience emotions and density and physicality that we may not have in other realms, that if someone is working through betrayal issues, or it seems to come up a lot when I'm talking to people in spirit, that a lot of us are breaking some cyclical lifetime patterns right about now. It seems that a lot of patterns that people have gone through many lifetimes with similar lessons or similar experiences, and now all of a sudden things are shifting in a new direction, and it's the line in the sand time. And I'm wondering if you ever see that in any of the regression work that you do.
I do, and I'll ask the guides, I'll ask their guide, is this something that can be resolved in their current life? And so, again, they're not always clear-cut with their answers, but they may say there's the possibility, there's the opportunity. They may tease the client and say, no, for this client, it's going to take a lot more than or even available, try to get the client to lighten up. But I'll ask the guide, and they may say, yes, they are clearing this pattern now, and this will be the end of it. Or they may say it's going to take another lifetime. Sometimes when I'm working with clients, the session is helping to clear the pattern. So they're moving forward in their life free of that pattern, and they've still got many years left in their current life to work on what's coming next.
Which goes back to what you started with, that we're all blessed with free will. Yes. So even though there may be the patterns, the lifetime, if we choose to, and I think the work that you're doing is an incredible, incredible catalyst and time of healing, I'm sure, for so many people that you meet with. And the free will piece allows them to make more conscious choices about what they're doing in this lifetime.
Exactly. And it's such powerful work. I'm blessed to be able to be part of it and to be able to share in the experience with the client. And speaking to some of the questions that you're asking, something that I've noticed with many, many, many of the guides, and the clients don't know each other. A few of them do, but they don't know each other. Their guides are not, they have each have their own guides. But over the years, the theme that's come through is joy. Mm-hmm. If you want to break the pattern, find your joy, find your bliss. They don't want us down here overthinking everything. We can overthink past lives. We can overthink life between lives. We can overthink the spirit world. And the point is, we're down here on this planet to live and experience. And they don't want us to waste this lifetime overthinking the spirit world, because we'll be there soon enough. But when we're here, they want us to tap into our joy and our abilities and our talents, because that's going to rise above patterns. That's going to rise above ruts and, holes that we get ourselves down in. And it's going to keep energy flowing. And when we're in a joyful state, we're able to connect with them. When we're in a depressed state, we can't connect. We're creating a blockage, but there's learning that takes place there. There's learning that takes place on both sides.
Very much
Well,
so.
speaking of learning, you're such a natural teacher yourself. I'm surprised you didn't start out as a teacher, but as an actress. I mean, just listening to you, I love the way, you give your sessions and your courses acronyms, and you explain things so effortlessly. I just love it. For people who are listening to this going, I want to do this, I want to try this, Bryn is actually teaching a wonderful series of classes coming up. From April 19th to the 24th, she's teaching a hypno skill set level 1. And after that, on May 17th to the 22nd, she's teaching past life hypno regression, where you can get certified in doing this for yourself. Do you want to tell people a little bit more about those two classes coming up?
Sure, thank you. So I really enjoy teaching. And the level 1 hypno skill sets is teaching the basics of hypnosis. It covers transpersonal hypnosis and clinical hypnosis, things like fears and phobias, smoking cessation, weight release, finding lost objects, moving through forgiveness work in a hypnotic state. It gives you the basics. And it also teaches you through lecture, through experientials, through demos. I always demo in front of the class. I will let the students pair up and go off into the breakout rooms to experience, working through one of their issues, or facilitate a session to lead someone else to work through some of their issues. That's part of the learning experience. And we do this from a client-centered approach. You're creating a safe space so that your client can go into that space and explore. And then level 2, we get into, and also in level 1, we do counterparts therapy. And that's where we're working with the various aspects of ourselves in a deeper state to resolve an issue. And all of this that's level 1. And then in level 2, we get into the hypnobridge process. We get into regression work, current life, and past life regression. And again, you'll experience a past life regression. You'll experience some current life regression as part of the class. You'll see a demo or two, and also facilitate sessions as part of that. And so some people will take level 1 just to try it out, and then they'll decide to go ahead and take level 2. And then others know that they want to do this kind of work, and they'll come in and take both parts. And, some decide they want to do it back to back, level 1 and then level 2. And then some may take level 1 now and come back around and take level 2 a little bit further down the road. So it's set up to
so
cover
exciting. Denise and I actually called her maybe 2 months ago, and I said, there is a woman in town that everybody raves about, and she's teaching this class. And last year I couldn't do it because I had a conflict with the dates, and this year she's doing it again, and I'm out of town both those dates, and I was complaining. And Denise said, I want to do that too. And I had no idea, Denise, at that time that you wanted to do this as well. So we are planning on taking your course next year.
That'd be great. And
because we really have heard such good things.
I keep them small because it's such an intimate group, and it's such intense energy work that we're doing. It's hypnosis, but it's energy work. It's just a lot of fun clearing all of this and exploring and delving into the deeper levels.
That's so cool. Now, people can read some of your stories in Michael Newton's book and Brian Weiss's book, but your own book with your stories is coming out in 2019. Is that coming out in the fall, spring, winter? Do you know yet?
I believe it's going to be with Llewellyn Publishing, and I believe it's going to be in the spring of 2019. We're in the editing process right now.
Wow. Okay, so you have to come back on right before it comes out or right after it comes out and share some stories from the book. I love the title, Hindsight is Foresight. That's just an awesome title.
Thank you. I would love to come back. I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh, I've enjoyed it. I could actually keep talking to you for 4 more hours because I have so many more questions. But we will leave it there for now. But this has really been so enlightening. And for everybody listening, please check out Bryn Blankinship. We really think you will enjoy connecting with her. Is it ever possible to do phone sessions, or would that not work?
I don't generally do them unless it's somebody that I've worked with before, because there are just a lot of parameters that I have to set up. And, if they're in a deeper state and then we lose the internet connection, then...
Yeah, I think that would be awful. Yeah. Well, the nice thing is that we live in a beach town. So for people to come here, it's actually a vacation. It's not like they're going to, some town out in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly. And a lot of people will go out to the beach and hang out afterwards and just kind of chill, there on the beach, take a swim. My office is near Poplar Grove Plantation, so they might take a walk around Poplar Grove in the woods and just have that quiet reflection time as well.
And we were voted the #1 riverfront walk in the country, everybody. So we have a beautiful downtown. Yes. So if you want to learn more about connecting with Bryn, you can go to brynblankinship.com. It's BrynBlankenship. And you can connect with her there. Go ahead.
It's BLANKINSHIP.
What did I say? I'm so sorry. I have it spelled just like you said in front of me. I don't know what the heck I read. Okay, I'm sorry. We will post links in the show notes and on our Facebook page with the correct spelling to get to her website. But we really hope you guys check her out because she's just highly regarded in our town and internationally, and I think you guys will really enjoy working with her. And I think, as you guys can tell, too, from just listening to her, she's a really, really good teacher. So if you're looking to take your spiritual level to a hypnotherapy level, I think you should consider connecting with her for those classes as well. And we look forward to having you back in the spring of next year to talk about your book. I can't wait to hear more about that. So thank you so very much for joining us, and thank you everybody for listening. If you have questions you want to send to us to get to Bryn as well, we can do that. Like I said, we'll definitely have you back on, and we just thank you so much for taking this time out to be with us today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, it was so exciting. Thank you. Everybody have a beautiful week. Don't forget to show up, do great work, and share your light. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.